The galaxy was full of stars, but for the Queen of Velara, the night sky had become nothing but a reminder of her loss. She ruled over a shining empire. Her people respected her strength, and her armies stretched across half the quadrant. Yet, in her private chambers she sat in silence, staring at the empty space beside her throne. That space belonged to her daughter, the youngest princess of Velara, who had been stolen away during a brutal raid many years ago. The queen remembered that day clearly. It was supposed to be a celebration. The young princess had only just turned 8. She was curious, always asking questions about the world beyond the palace walls. She wanted to see the stars, to travel among them, to learn about the different species that lived in the galaxy. But the celebration was shattered by an attack. Raiders from the Zorak Dominion swept down without warning. They came not for riches but for hostages. In the chaos, the princess vanished. The guards were slain, the palace burned, and the queen's heart was torn apart. Search parties were sent across countless worlds. Fleets were dispatched, mercenaries were paid, and spies were instructed to find any trace of the missing child. But as the years passed, hope slowly faded. The queen, however, never stopped believing. Somewhere out there, her daughter still lived. She could feel it in her heart. Far from the glittering towers of Velara's capital, a different story was unfolding on a forgotten world near the border of the galaxy. The planet was called Druskan 5, a cold and ruined place where war had left nothing but rubble. Once it had been a colony of miners, but after years of battles, only ruins and ash remained. Few dared to live there now, only scavengers, criminals, and survivors of war. Among the ruins, a lone human soldier walked. His name was Captain Elias Ward. His uniform was worn, and his armor carried the scars of many battles. He had no army behind him now, only himself and the will to keep moving. The war between humans and the Zorak Dominion had ended, but peace was fragile. Soldiers like him were left wandering, carrying memories heavier than any weapon. Elias had been sent to Druskan 5 for a mission few would dare to accept. He was searching for survivors, people taken by raiders, slaves hidden away in the shadows of broken cities. Most would have turned away, calling it hopeless. But Elias could not. Too many times he had seen the weak abandoned. Too many times he had seen those without power crushed by the strong. So he searched, step by step, through the cold ruins. The wind howled across the cracked stone. Snow fell in soft sheets, covering the wreckage of buildings. Elias kept moving, his rifle in hand, his eyes sharp. He knew raiders still lingered here. But he also knew something else. He wasn't alone. He found the child by accident. At first, he thought it was just movement in the shadows, but then he heard a small, shaky breath. He turned the corner of a shattered wall and saw her. She was thin, dressed in torn fabric that had once been elegant, but now hung like rags. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly with the strange violet hue of the Velaran people. Her face was marked with dirt and fear, yet there was still a hint of nobility in the way she held herself. She could not have been more than 12 years old. The girl froze when she saw Elias. She pressed herself against the wall, trembling. She did not speak his language, but the fear in her eyes was universal. Elias lowered his weapon slowly. His voice was calm, steady. "It's all right," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl did not understand the words, but she heard the tone. Her breathing slowed, though her eyes stayed locked on him. He noticed the strange mark on her wrist. A royal seal burned into the skin, hidden under dirt and dust. His heart tightened. This was no ordinary child, she was someone important, someone who had been taken far from home. The sound of footsteps broke the moment. Elias turned quickly, raising his rifle. 3 raiders stepped out of the ruins, their armor painted with the cruel symbols of the Zorak Dominion. They grinned when they saw the girl. "There she is," one of them sneered in a harsh tongue. "The prize. The boss will pay well for her." Elias did not hesitate. His rifle barked with fire, the sound echoing through the ruins. The raiders fell one after another before they could even raise their weapons. When silence returned, Elias looked back at the girl. She was staring at him wide-eyed. She had seen many cruel men, but this human, this soldier, was different. He had protected her without asking for anything. Slowly, Elias lowered his weapon again. He extended a hand. "Come with me," he said. The girl hesitated. Trust was not easy after so much pain, but something in his eyes made her believe. Carefully, she reached out and took his hand. Elias felt her small fingers tremble against his gloves. "Good," he said softly. "You're safe now. I'll get you home." Of course, he had no idea where her home was, not yet. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not leave her behind. The days that followed were hard. Elias moved carefully through the ruins, avoiding patrols and hiding from larger bands of raiders. The girl followed him closely, never letting go of his side. She did not speak his language, but she began to learn small words. Water. Food. Safe. Each time she repeated them, Elias smiled and encouraged her. At night, when they rested by small fires hidden in caves, she would watch him carefully. He cleaned his weapon, checked his maps, and whispered to himself about the path forward. She could not understand all of it, but she understood one thing. This human was not like the others she had seen in chains or on battlefields. He was different. One night, as the snow fell outside their cave, Elias handed her a piece of dried food. She looked at it, then at him. Carefully, she spoke a single word in her own language. Guardian. Elias paused. He did not know the word, but he understood its meaning in her eyes. She had chosen to trust him. He gave a small nod. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll be your guardian." From that moment on, the bond between them grew stronger. But danger was never far. The raiders had lost their prize once, and they were determined to get her back. Rumors spread quickly among the underworld. A human soldier was traveling with a child who looked like a royal. Every bounty hunter and mercenary in the sector began searching for them. Elias knew time was running out. He needed to find a way off the planet, and fast. But each step forward meant more risk, more enemies, and more battles ahead. Still, he did not falter. The girl's trust gave him strength, and in her eyes he saw something he had not seen in years. Hope. He did not know yet that the child he had rescued was the lost princess of Velara, the daughter of a grieving queen. He did not know that this journey would change the fate of two worlds. All he knew was that he had made a promise, and Captain Elias Ward was not a man who broke his promises. The cold winds of Droskin 5 never stopped. They carried the cries of broken buildings and whistled through the empty streets like ghosts. Elias Ward moved carefully with the young girl at his side. Her small hand clung to his glove, and though she said little, her eyes told him everything: fear, exhaustion, and the fragile spark of trust. He had promised to protect her, but now he needed to think beyond the ruins. Staying on this planet was suicide. Raiders and bounty hunters were already searching. To keep his promise, Elias had to get her off-world. That meant finding a ship, or at least someone who could get them close to one. The problem was simple. Anyone still living on this broken world was dangerous. Teaching Trustin their second day together, Elias stopped near a half-collapsed shelter. Snow fell gently over the ruins, covering the ground in white. He knelt down, taking his canteen from his belt. The girl watched him closely as he poured water into a small tin cup. "Drink," he said, offering it. She tilted her head. She understood the tone more than the word. Slowly, she reached out, took the cup, and drank. When she was done, Elias pointed to the water and repeated clearly, "Water." The girl blinked, then copied him. "Water." A small smile tugged at Elias's lips. She was learning. Later, when he handed her food, he did the same. "Food." She tried again, stumbling over the human word, but each time she improved. By the third day, she could say both words without hesitation. Elias felt pride rise in his chest. This was more than survival. He was building a bridge between them, one word at a time. That night, as they sat by a hidden fire deep in a cave, the girl pointed to him. She spoke in her own tongue, slow and clear. Guardian. Elias remembered the word from before. He gave a short nod. Yes, Guardian? The girl smiled faintly. It was the first true smile he had seen from her. The raiders return, but peace never lasted long on Droskan Vir. The following morning, while Elias scouted the ruins for supplies, he heard movement. Low voices. He crouched quickly, pulling the girl close to him against a wall. Human soldier? The child in reward. Elias recognized the guttural Zorak language. Raiders. They were hunting. The girl's breathing quickened. Elias placed a finger to his lips. Quiet, he whispered. She did not know the word, but she understood. The raiders moved closer, their boots crunching over the snow. Elias counted 3 of them. Their weapons were crude but deadly. If they saw her, they would drag her away again. He could not let that happen. When the raiders turned a corner, Elias moved. His rifle cracked once, twice, 3 times, each shot precise. The raiders dropped before they had a chance to shout. Silence fell again. The girl pressed herself against him, her wide violet eyes fixed on the bodies. Elias looked at her gently. Safe, he said, pointing at her, then at himself. Safe, she nodded slowly. For the first time, she truly seemed to believe it. Learning to walk together, their journey across the ruins grew harder each day. The girl's legs were small and the snow was deep. Elias often lifted her onto his shoulders to keep her moving. She laughed once, a soft and surprised sound when he carried her this way. It was the sound of a child remembering what it felt like to be free, even for a moment. As they walked, Elias taught her more words. Sky. He pointed upward at the endless clouds. Sky, she repeated softly. Star, he said one night, pointing at the faint lights above the clouds. Star, she whispered, as if the word itself was magic. Each word brought them closer. Elias began to understand her language too, little by little. She taught him the word for home, pressing her hand over her chest as she spoke it. Home, Elias repeated gently. I'll get you home. Her eyes shone when she heard him say it. Enemies everywhere. The problem was escape. Droskan Fi was blockaded by mercenaries who served the Zorak Dominion. No ship left the surface without their approval. Elias knew he needed a clever plan, not brute force. One evening, while scavenging near the remains of an old mining station, Elias found something useful, a half-broken star map device. It showed local smuggler routes. If he could reach the southern side of the planet, there was a chance to find smugglers reckless enough to sell passage. Dangerous, yes, but their only chance. He studied the map carefully while the girl sat beside him. She leaned against his arm, tired from the day's travel. Elias glanced at her. Her trust in him was absolute now, and the weight of that trust pressed heavy on his heart. Don't worry, he whispered, though she did not understand the words. I'll get you through this. A promise tested. 2 days later, his promise was tested. They were halfway through a frozen canyon when they were ambushed. A squad of mercenaries dropped down from the cliffs above, weapons ready. Their leader, a tall alien with jagged armor, pointed at the girl. That one, he growled in broken human speech. Royal blood. She comes with us. The girl froze, terror flooding her face. She clutched Elias's hand so tightly it hurt. Elias stepped forward, putting himself between her and the mercenaries. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with steel. She's under my protection. The mercenaries laughed. One human cannot stop us. Elias raised his rifle. Try me. The canyon erupted in fire. Elias moved like a shadow, using the terrain, forcing the mercenaries into confusion. Each shot he fired was precise, each movement calculated. The girl hid behind a rock, watching with wide eyes as the human fought with a fury born of determination. One by one, the mercenaries fell. Their leader charged, swinging a heavy blade, but Elias met him head-on. With a final strike, the mercenary dropped into the snow. Breathing hard, Elias turned back to the girl. She ran to him, tears streaming down her face. She clutched his armor and whispered in her own tongue, Guardian, safe. Elias knelt, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. Always, he said. A bond beyond words. That night they camped under a broken metal roof to shield themselves from the snow. The girl sat close to the fire, warming her hands. Elias sat nearby, cleaning his rifle. She looked at him for a long time, then pointed to herself. Lyra, she said quietly. Elias blinked. Lyra, that's your name? She nodded. Lyra, Elias smiled faintly. Lyra, that's a good name. Then she pointed at him. Guardian, he shook his head softly. Elias, he corrected. She frowned, repeating carefully, Lee. As that's right, he said with a small grin. From then on, she called him by name. Each time she said it, it sounded brighter, as if the sound of it gave her courage. Elias felt something shift inside him. He had saved many people in his life, but this was different. With Lyra, it wasn't just duty. It was something deeper, something personal. He was not only a soldier anymore. He was her protector, her teacher, her guide through the darkness, the path ahead. With every passing day, the danger grew. More mercenaries searched the ruins. More whispers spread through the underworld about a human soldier with a royal child. The bounty on Lyra's head climbed higher. Elias knew they could not stay much longer. They had to reach the smuggler's route before the hunters closed in completely. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but he had made a promise. As he watched Lyra sleep beside the fire that night, her face peaceful for the first time in years, Elias whispered into the cold air, "No matter what happens, I'll get you home." The stars above seemed to listen, distant and silent. Elias did not yet know who Lyra truly was, or the weight of her name, but he knew this. His promise would carry them through every danger, and in the end it might change not only their lives but the fate of two worlds. The throne room of Velara was filled with light. Tall crystal pillars rose like trees of glass, glowing softly with energy. The great banners of the Empire hung high, showing the silver crest of the royal family. Courtiers, advisors, and soldiers filled the hall, speaking in hushed tones. Yet despite all the color and wealth, the throne itself looked empty. On that throne sat Queen Seraphine of Velara, ruler of millions, guardian of fleets, and leader of one of the most powerful empires in the quadrant. Her crown shone brightly and her robes were woven with silver threads, but her eyes told another story. They carried years of pain, of loss that no treasure could mend. It had been 4 long years since her daughter vanished. The youngest princess of Velara, her bright child full of curiosity, had been taken during the Zorak raid. The queen remembered every detail. The alarms, the fires, the chaos, and then the empty silence when she realized her daughter was gone. The court had urged her many times to declare the child dead. They said it was the only way for her to heal, the only way for the Empire to move forward. But the queen had always refused. "She lives," Queen Seraphine said firmly each time. "My daughter breathes somewhere in this galaxy. I will not let her memory be buried while her heart still beats." Some of the courtiers admired her strength. Others whispered that grief had clouded her mind. But no one dared to speak too loudly, for the queen's gaze could silence even the boldest voice. The queen's memories, late at night, when the palace grew quiet, Seraphine often walked the halls alone. She would stop at the small chamber where her daughter once played. The toys still remained on the shelves untouched. The small star globe her daughter loved still spun slowly, showing tiny constellations across the ceiling. Seraphine would sit there in silence, remembering. She remembered the way her daughter's laughter filled the air. She remembered how the child would tug at her robes, asking questions about distant stars. "Mother, what is it like beyond the capital? Will I ever see the other worlds?" Seraphine had always answered gently, "One day, my little star. One day you will see them all." That promise haunted her now. Pressure from the council, the royal council, grew restless. During a meeting in the Hall of Stars, the High Minister bowed and spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, it has been too long. The Empire must move forward. Without closure, doubt spreads. Some say the line of succession is uncertain." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting I name another heir?" The minister bowed lower. "Only that the people need stability, Majesty. Hope cannot guide armies. Grief cannot govern." The Queen rose from her seat. Her voice rang like steel. "Hope has carried this empire through storms greater than this. My daughter is not gone. She is out there waiting for me, waiting for us. And until I see proof of her death, you will not speak of succession again." The council fell silent. None dared to argue further. The secret search, though the official fleets had ended their search, the Queen had never stopped. In secret, she kept agents moving across the stars, whispering in markets, questioning travelers, paying smugglers. Any rumor of a child, any hint of a royal seal, she followed. Many leads ended in nothing. Some were cruel traps set by enemies who wished to wound her further. But still she did not stop. One evening, as she stood on her balcony overlooking the glowing city, her most trusted captain, Commander Valen, approached. He bowed deeply. "My queen, there is news." Seraphine turned quickly, her heart leaping. "Tell me." Valen hesitated before speaking. "It is only rumor, but word spreads through the underworld. They say a human soldier travels with a child." "A child with violet eyes?" The queen's breath caught. "Violet eyes?" "Yes, Majesty. Some say the child wears the mark of royalty on her wrist." Seraphine's hand pressed against her chest. Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe, but she had been disappointed too many times before. Still, something inside her whispered that this was different. "Where?" she asked sharply. "On the world of Droskan-Fi," Valen said. "But it is dangerous, Majesty. Raiders and mercenaries fight for control there. Many would kill to possess such a child." The queen's voice trembled slightly, but her words were firm. "Send our best scouts. If there is even the smallest chance this is my daughter, I will not ignore it." The enemy's mockery, not all welcomed her hope. Across the stars, the Zorak Dominion listened to these whispers too. In their war chambers they laughed. "Look at the queen," one Zorak warlord sneered, still clinging to her lost child. "She is weak. Her heart blinds her." But another leaned forward thoughtfully. "If the child truly lives, she could be used. Imagine the queen's empire torn apart by hope and fear. If she thinks her daughter returns, we can strike where she is most vulnerable." The Dominion began sending their own agents to Droskan by the queen's private prayer that night. Queen Seraphine stood in the Hall of Light, a sacred place where rulers often came to seek strength. The tall crystals glowed with warmth reflecting across the marble floor. Alone she knelt, her crown set aside, her voice soft. "Daughter," she whispered into the silence, "my little star. If you live, if you hear me somehow, know this: I will never stop searching. I will never stop waiting. No matter how far, no matter how long. You are not forgotten. You are my heart. You are my light." For the first time in years, a single tear slipped down her cheek. She quickly brushed it away. Queens could weep, but they could not be seen as broken. She rose, her shoulders straightening. If her daughter still lived, then she would meet her again with strength, not weakness. A spark of hope. Weeks later, more reports arrived. Commander Valen entered the throne room quickly. "Majesty, the rumors grow stronger. Traitors claim the human soldier protects the child fiercely. They say he fights off raiders, that he calls her by name." The queen's pulse quickened. "Her name? Did they hear it?" "Lyra," Valen said carefully. The queen gasped. Her hand covered her mouth. That was the name only her family knew. The name she whispered to her daughter when no one else was near. "Lyra, my little star." Tears threatened her eyes, but she stood tall. "If this is true, then my daughter lives. Prepare the fleet. Send emissaries. We will not let her slip away again." The court erupted in whispers. Some doubted still. But others, for the first time in years, felt hope stir within them. A galaxy shifting far away, Elias and Lyra continued their dangerous journey, unaware that the queen now moved heaven and earth to find them. The galaxy itself seemed to tremble with change. In the Dominion, warlords planned new strikes. In the smuggler dens, whispers grew louder. And in the heart of Velara, a mother's hope burned brighter than ever before. Queen Seraphine knew battles lay ahead. She knew her enemies would use her daughter's return to weaken her. But she did not care. For the first time in years, she smiled, a true smile filled with fire. "My daughter lives," she whispered to herself. "And soon I will hold her again." The queen's sorrow had not ended, but it had transformed into something else, into hope, into strength. And with that strength, the course of the galaxy was about to change. The twin suns of Droskan-Fi were setting, casting a cold red glow across the frozen landscape. Elias and Lyra had been traveling for days without rest, moving carefully through canyons, ruins, and snow-covered valleys. Their goal was simple: reach the southern smuggler route before the raiders or Dominion agents could find them. But the galaxy was not kind to those traveling alone, and danger was never far. The first ambush, as they rounded a jagged cliffside, Elias spotted movement in the distance. Snow whirled around, two shapes creeping across the ridge above them. He crouched low, signaling Lyra to hide behind a rock. "Stay down," he whispered, pointing at the rocks. The figures above were scouts, Zorak Dominion operatives. Their weapons glinted in the dim light. Elias counted 4, all armed and alert. He knew they had to move carefully. If they were spotted, Lyra would be captured again. Elias scanned the area, looking for cover. His mind worked quickly. He noticed a narrow ledge leading up to a higher cliff. "We can use that," he said softly, "but you must trust me." Lyra nodded, gripping his hand. She did not speak the words, but her eyes said it all. She trusted him. They moved slowly, keeping low, climbing the ledge with care. The scouts below had not noticed yet. Every step was tense. A wrong move could mean disaster. When they finally reached the top, Elias crouched and signaled Lyra to stay behind a boulder. From there, they could see the scouts clearly. Elias whispered, "We'll have to distract them." He picked up a small rock and threw it far down the canyon. The sound of it hitting snow and stone drew the scouts' attention. As they looked away, Elias led Lyra down another path, silent as shadows. The first ambush had been avoided. But Elias knew this was only the beginning. The harsh night that night. They camped under the remains of a collapsed outpost. Snow fell in soft sheets covering their footprints. Lyra huddled close to Elias, shivering from the cold and fear. He handed her a small canteen of water. "Drink," he said. She sipped, then whispered the word she had learned. "Wah." Elias smiled faintly. "Good," he said, pressing the canteen back into his bag. As the fire flickered, Elias studied her face. Lyra had grown in many ways since he found her. Her eyes no longer held only fear, they carried determination, courage, and trust. "You're strong," he told her quietly. "You survive things no child should survive. And you're still here. That means you're stronger than anyone who wants to stop us." Lyra looked at him, unsure if she understood all the words, but the tone was clear. He believed in her. She nodded slowly. The smuggler's route by the next morning, Elias had planned their next move. The smuggler route was dangerous, but it was their only chance to leave Droskin V. Using the star map he had scavenged, he identified an abandoned landing platform where a small freighter might be found. They traveled for hours, keeping to the shadows, avoiding patrols. The cold bit into their faces and snow made every step heavier. Elias carried Lyra on his back for part of the way. She had grown used to it, but she still giggled once when he lifted her, a sound that warmed his heart amidst the cold. Finally, they reached the landing platform. It was quiet, abandoned, and dangerous. Any smuggler who arrived could easily be followed or ambushed. Elias checked the perimeter carefully. "There," he whispered. A small freighter sat half buried in snow, engines cold but intact. "This is our ride. A dangerous encounter is." Elias prepared to inspect the freighter. A loud rumble echoed through the canyon. Raiders had found them. He cursed under his breath and pulled Lyra close. "Stay behind me," he ordered. The raiders arrived swiftly, weapons drawn, their eyes on Lyra. One of them laughed cruelly. "The little princess won't get far, human. Hand her over or face us." Elias did not hesitate. His rifle rang out, precise shots taking down 2 raiders instantly. Lyra pressed herself against the cold metal wall of the freighter, fear in her eyes. "Guardian," she whispered. Elias turned briefly. "Always," he said, then focused again. The remaining raiders charged. Elias moved with careful precision, using the terrain and the freighter itself as cover. He ducked, rolled, and fired, each movement saving Lyra from harm. In the end, the raiders lay defeated, groaning in the snow. Lyra looked up at him, eyes wide. "You'd saved me." Elias knelt and gently lifted her. "I promised," he said. "I will get you home, Lyra, no matter what." Lessons in courage. Once the immediate danger had passed, Elias taught Lyra more than words. He taught her small skills for survival, how to move quietly, how to recognize danger, how to use the environment to protect herself. "Why do you teach me these things?" Lyra asked, still nervous from the ambush. "Because you're stronger than you know," he said. "And because someday you may have to protect yourself. Not everyone will be as careful or kind as me." Lyra nodded slowly. She practiced quietly, imitating his movements, learning to crouch and move silently. Elias smiled. Each small step was a victory. A growing bond during their journey, the bond between Elias and Lyra deepened. It was no longer just soldier and child, it was something like family. Lyra began to trust him completely, confiding her fears and hopes even though her words were still broken. One evening, as they huddled near a fire in a snow-covered canyon, Lyra asked softly, Elias, why do you risk yourself for me? You don't have to. Elias looked at her thoughtful. Because every child deserves to see their mother again. Because you're important. Because I promised. And promises are more than words, they are actions. Lyra's eyes glistened. She did not fully understand, but she felt it. His promise was not just speech, it was his life, his courage, his loyalty. I thank you, she said in her own tongue. Elias nodded. You don't have to thank me. Just stay safe. That's enough. The final stretch by the next day, the freighter was ready. Elias had repaired the engines enough to make a short flight off the planet. The snowstorm had slowed their pursuers, giving them a brief window. They moved quickly, Lyra clinging to him as they approached the ship. Elias checked the area one last time, then lifted her gently and placed her inside. Seatbelt, he said, and Lyra followed his instructions obediently. Elias started the engine. The freighter shuddered, then lifted slowly into the sky. The snow-covered planet fell away beneath them. For a moment, all was quiet. Safe. Lyra looked out the small window at the fading ground. She whispered almost to herself, Home? Elias smiled faintly. Yes. Home, a promise kept. For now, as the freighter rose into the cold void of space, Elias knew the journey was far from over. Raiders and Dominion agents would not give up so easily. The galaxy itself seemed to conspire against them. But one thing was certain. No force could break the bond between him and Lyra. He had made a promise, and he would keep it. Somewhere in the stars, Queen Seraphine searched as well. Soon the paths of mother, daughter, and soldier would converge. But for now, Elias watched over Lyra, keeping her safe, teaching her, protecting her from a galaxy that had been cruel and unkind. And in the quiet moments, as the freighter moved among distant stars, he allowed himself to hope that the next chapter would bring them all together. The freighter glided silently through the dark expanse of space. Stars stretched endlessly around them, like tiny lanterns lighting the path. Lyra sat by the small window, her violet eyes wide, reflecting the shimmering lights. She had never seen so many stars up close. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of safety. Elias sat beside her, checking the controls, listening carefully for any sign of pursuit. Are we safe? Lyra asked softly, her voice trembling slightly. Elias gave her a reassuring smile. For now, he said. But we're almost there. Just a little further. She pressed her small hand against the glass, staring out at the void. Somewhere out there, her mother waited. The Queen had not forgotten her. She had never stopped searching. And now, after years of fear and loss, Lyra felt a warmth in her chest that she had not known for a long time. Hope. Approaching Velara. The journey back to Velara was tense. The freighter was small and unarmed, vulnerable to attack. Elias had to navigate carefully through patrol zones and dangerous asteroid fields. Every moment required attention, precision, and courage. But the thought of reuniting Lyra with her mother gave him strength. Every obstacle, every risk seemed smaller compared to the promise he had made. Lyra, sensing his determination, held his hand tightly. She did not need to speak the words. She knew he would protect her no matter the cost. Hours later, the glowing spires of Velara's capital came into view. The city shimmered like a jewel against the darkness of space. The Queen's fleets glimmered below, and even from orbit, Lyra felt her heartbeat quicken. Home, she whispered. Elias smiled faintly. Yes, Lyra, home. The Queen awaits in the throne room, Queen Seraphine paced. Reports from her scouts had been promising. A human soldier had been spotted with a child matching the princess's description. Every hour, every minute, her hope grew stronger, and so did her fear. What if it is not her? She asked softly, though no one else was present. Commander Velan, standing respectfully behind her, bowed. Majesty, the signs are clear. The child is the princess, and the soldier. He has brought her here safely. Seraphine's breath caught. Her heart pounded. She moved to the balcony, looking out at the sky. Soon she would see her daughter. Soon she would hold her again. She could hardly wait. Landing and reunion. The freighter descended slowly into the capital's docking bay. Elias guided the ship carefully, avoiding the massive fleets and ensuring a smooth landing. The engines cut off and silence fell. Lyra jumped from her seat, rushing to the exit. She did not hesitate, running into the bright open space of the docking bay. And there, standing amidst the waiting guards and court members, was Queen Seraphine herself. The queen's eyes widened, and for a moment she could not breathe. Every step of Lyra's small body toward her felt like years melting away. Then the princess called out clearly, "Mom! I'm back. He saved me." Tears sprang to Seraphine's eyes. She rushed forward, enveloping Lyra in her arms. The child clung tightly, burying her face against her mother's chest. Tears fell freely, glistening on her violet hair and shimmering robes. Elias watched quietly from a short distance, standing tall and humble. He had kept his promise. He had returned the lost princess to her mother. And in that moment, words were not needed. Gratitude and honor, the court erupted in whispers and murmurs. Humans were respected, but few had ever been honored in the heart of Velara. The queen finally stepped back slightly, her eyes still glistening with tears, and looked at Elias. "You brought her back," she said, her voice steady despite emotion. "You have done what no one else could. You have restored hope to my heart and to my people." Elias bowed respectfully. "I only did what I promised, Majesty." The queen smiled warmly. "You have not only kept your promise, human, but you have also reminded us of the courage and loyalty of your kind. You are a hero of Velara." Guards and courtiers bowed to him. Elias, unaccustomed to such honors, kept his head low. Yet inside he felt something swell. Pride, yes, but also relief. Lyra was safe, and the galaxy's future had shifted because of human courage. A new beginning days passed in the palace. Lyra and Queen Seraphine spent hours together, recounting memories, learning, and healing. Lyra shared her experiences with Elias, though carefully, knowing the queen needed to hear her story firsthand. The queen often watched Elias as he trained with the royal guards or patrolled the palace. She saw not just a soldier, but a man of heart and intelligence. She knew the Empire owed him a debt far greater than words could express. One evening she approached him in the palace garden. Soft lights glowed over fountains and flowering plants, and the air smelled of distant seas. "Elias," she said gently, "I want you to stay, not as a soldier, but as part of our family. Lyra will need guidance, and you have proven yourself trustworthy. Will you accept this?" Elias blinked, surprised. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Lyra called from nearby, running to them. "Please stay with me." Elias smiled. For the first time he allowed himself to relax fully. "Yes," he said softly. "I will stay." The queen placed her hand on his shoulder. "Then you are not only a hero of Earth, but a hero of Velara as well." Healing and celebration, the Empire celebrated their princess's return. Courtiers, soldiers, and citizens cheered. Banners were raised. Ships flew in formations across the sky. The queen addressed her people, speaking of hope, courage, and loyalty. Not just of her daughter, but of the human soldier who had made it all possible. Elias and Lyra watched the festivities together. Lyra held his hand tightly, her trust and love for him stronger than ever. Elias looked at her and then at the skies above, thinking of the countless dangers they had faced. Every struggle had been worth it. For the first time in years, Lyra laughed freely, spinning in the gardens with her mother. The past pain seemed distant now, replaced by hope, joy, and a bright future. A hero of two worlds, Elias became a symbol, not just of courage in battle, but of humanity at its best. Loyalty, bravery, and compassion had crossed the stars to change the fate of an empire. He trained alongside Velara's soldiers, advised on strategies, and continued to protect Lyra. But more importantly, he became part of a family that spanned worlds. Queen Seraphine often watched him with quiet gratitude. Lyra had her mother's love, but she also had a guardian who had risked everything to keep her alive. In that, the queen saw the best of humanity, courage, honor, and heart. The galaxy was changing. Alliances shifted. New friendships were formed between humans and Velarans, and at the center of it all stood Elias Ward, a simple soldier who had done extraordinary things. Closing the circle one evening, after the celebrations, Elias and Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Lights shimmered across the spires. The stars above twinkled in silent promise. "Guardian, Elias," Lyra said softly. "Yes, Lyra? Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Elias knelt, looking into her eyes. "You don't need to thank me. I promised I'd bring you home, and I did." "That's enough," Lyra smiled, hugging him briefly. For the first time in years, she felt truly safe, truly loved, and truly home. And somewhere in the palace, Queen Seraphine watched them, tears in her eyes, smiling. Her little star had returned. Humanity had proven its worth. And for once, the universe felt whole again. The promise had been kept. The child was safe. And the bond between worlds had been forged forever.